Hello, hello, hello. Making a healing energy rock video for myself and all living beings equally much. This is my inverted skull with my inverted skull rock. I have been through extreme emotions within this last week. And I'm just now coming out the other end of that tunnel. It feels like when you're in that kind of mental state, feels like you're never going to come out anymore, and feels like you're not going to come out alive. That's what it feels like. I had a nervous breakdown. I used this to go through a primal session with that. I just let myself go all the way through. The anger was out of this world that I felt. And one can clearly hear, the other day, a couple of days ago, one could clearly hear the difference in my voice after I did that primal session. So my voice is now in recovery. It's going back to Mickey Mouse. So, which I don't like, but yeah, that's not really our choice. I guess if I meditated on my voice, I probably could get my voice a little deeper. I think Mickey Mouse has a lot to do with being on edge or being insecure or being nervous. So when I feel nervous, I get Mickey Mouse voice. I'm just now coming out of the other end of the tunnel. I already did yesterday. That's when I made the garden video. I see a brown recluse. My goodness. Oh, wow. I'm not gonna get Paul now. I want to make the video. It's important. That brown recluse has a very chic back color. Now the recluse is on the window itself. I don't think it can walk directly on the glass, because then it would slide off, I think. So it's staying in the corner. With a velveteen, black with a velveteen burgundy back and very thick legs. Very fast walking. Almost jumping. So that's a recluse. That's one of the recluse species, and we don't want to take any chances with those. My husband vacuums them up, so, and then he vacuums a couple of flies up and fruit flies so that they have something to eat in prison. I know, but it's all not good, and they want to be free too. They're not deliberately being mean. They're poisonous out of self-defense. So they don't even all automatically bite, but they bite when they feel trapped. So, and we don't want them to be trapped under the dog or in our beds and stuff like that. So for that reason, I highly recommend to vacuum them up, or maybe very quickly squish them. I've done that a few times. I don't like doing it, but there are priorities in the world that we have. We live with a range of priorities. This is how we live. That's our existence. Some people are misinformed about those priorities due to religion and archaic beliefs that are not congruent with science. Some people think they need to kill other mammals. That's a misunderstanding. But we have to get the recluses out of our house. That's for sure. I had a very disturbing Google Hangout conversation with my family overseas. And they were all they acted like they were all disappointed in me. I don't know what my brother told them. So a lot of misunderstandings that my dad got informed with. But my dad and my brother were at least willing to hear me, even though they interrupted me a lot, but at least they were willing to hear what I have to say to it. Impatiently though, but they did listen to it. It took a little longer, but they listened. While my mother was completely dead set against me, right from the start all the way to the bitter end of that conversation. And I stayed rational throughout the conversation. It started out awkward, and I didn't know how to start the conversation, and neither one started it. It felt a little bit sadistic to me, but maybe they too didn't know how to start the conversation. So I said, my brother and I talked this through in regards to the financial situation. And I listed all the facts and the data and the numbers. And my brother objected, so he had to recalculate things. So finally came out that I actually got much less. I got over $20,000 less in the last 15 years. So okay, that had to be cleared up. And and I told them that this is how I see it. Okay, I'm not coming here with some kind of demand. I'm coming here with the wish to express how I feel. That's all I wanted to do. I don't mean to cause pressure of any sort. I just wanted to stand my ground. I felt like in a courtroom, talking under oath or something. That's how I felt. That's how they made me feel. But I was appreciative that my brother and father, at least they were listening, and in the end they bowed their head down to the numbers that were different. So, and in total, like, sadness over their own miscalculation and misunderstanding, and in sadness over how complicated now things become since we have cleared up the facts. So that makes things a lot more complicated. It is always much easier to see things in a more practical, however lopsided way. Sometimes it's easier to put the Joker card on one person, or or the bad person card on one person. It's easier to do. It's much easier than to look at the facts, the reality, the nuances of truth. Truth has comes in gray shades and gray tones, and if and this and cause and effect. Most people don't do this. Most people don't look at each other in that way, finding out where that person's coming from, what the actual situation was, how they're feeling, why they're feeling the way they're feeling, and so on. They're just quick to judge, and it's easier that way. But that's not how we make progress forward, by coming to quick judgments that come out of a distorted view. I stated the facts, I stated my emotions, I stated my priorities, I stated my secondary plea and needs. So my priority is my parents being taken care of, like Greta Garbo was in Bel Air, having nurses in the house, and my parents not having to leave their beautiful home. That is and I said, even if there's no money left in the end and the money has to go to that, okay, so be it, that is my priority over my inheritance. I don't know how this is gonna all end up in the end, We don't know when we die. We can't, most people can't say, I'm gonna live for one more year and then this is, or I'm gonna die on this particular day at whatever 3 p.m. in the afternoon. There are some people that are able to do this, but most people don't, okay? So we don't know when we die, okay? And my parents, they might live for another 20 years, and things don't get easier when people are over 80, okay, and when they get into their super centenarian ages, so they're gonna have to have 24-hour staff in the house that takes care of them, that takes very good care, that cooks for them, that feeds them, that washes them, takes care of them, and it requires a very specific training for that. Not everyone is cut out to do this, particularly not when it comes to people who have lived a very high quality life standard their whole life. So that's a bit of a plunge and a shock if they would have to be taken care of, but let's say by a lay person who is not informed and not knowledgeable about how to take care of an elderly person. I personally could not do it. I couldn't. I could not do it. I'm not a people person to begin with. I'm extremely shaky emotionally. I am not very good with dodging and dealing with someone who has grudges and stuff like this. I'm not good with that. So we're gonna have to have, that's where the buffer has to be for, if the healthcare insurance does not cover it, and I hope it does, but I don't know if it does. So my mother didn't even listen to what I said the whole time. In the very end, I even suggested for my dad to reduce our monthly support, to reduce it so they have less expensive, but they weren't willing to do this. So instead they were then thinking of raising my monthly support, and I don't feel that comfortable about it. I would rather if it's lowered and balanced out for both of us, But my mother didn't listen to anything, so she raised her arms and said, oh, okay, then we're going to have to sell this property and we're going to have to move into a small little itty bitty house. You know, they're first of all, I mean, I don't even know where to start with that statement. But she hasn't listened to anything I said or suggested. And it completely threw me over the edge. I said to her, if that's how you think of me, you think of me like I'm your hair-eating monster. Why should I be in your life then? What's the point? And then she yelled at me and said, you talk like a monster. And then I yelled at her and I said, you talk like a monster. And then I said the F word because the Medusa came out and said that I didn't even have control over my body anymore. Medusa came out to protect. Medusa is my ego. And it protects me, and it has already saved my life. I know that it's not good when it comes to that point where that Medusa has to come out, but and it's not very beneficial for communication at all. When I get mad, the other one gets more mad. I get more mad. It just escalates. It's a war of words. It doesn't lead to anything. So I figured that right after it shot out of me, and I said, okay, I'm turning this off. And I did, because it wasn't going anywhere. It would not have gone anywhere. It would have continued with a yelling match, and I didn't want that. And I don't ever want that to happen again in the future. I have trouble falling asleep. I'm taking something to sleep at night. I take my tranquilizer herb during the day. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be able to cope with this at all. I'm on Purus right now, so one can see that I am a little bit sedated. It's a little bit. I can't cope any other way with this. There's no way I could. It's very painful, it's very painful when we're in a situation where we're either misunderstood or just simply hated for whatever reason. And not just hated, but hated by family members, and not only that, hated by their own mother. That is, to me, that is the worst thing there is. And the absolute worst is for an infant not to have a mother, or have a mother that is not emotionally available, or acts like an enemy, acts abusively. That is the absolute worst there is. And my mother was not emotionally available for me when I was a baby, and she was also sometimes emotionally abusive. And some people will argue, well, she was under a lot of stress. Yes, she was. My dad wasn't there for her. She was under a lot of stress. But that alone is not an excuse to let it out on their own baby. So that's not an excuse. My message to the world is, if you're not ready, if you are struggling with internal emotional pain, don't put a child into the world. And if you are a very unstable person with a lot of hostility and a lot of act outs, don't bring any being into your life. Don't even adopt a being into your life, because you will not be a stable mother for that other being. Work on yourself. Work these things through first. Don't cause more suffering. Don't cause more damage in other living beings. Don't cause trauma. Don't do those monkey tests. Don't isolate an animal and see what happens in the laboratories. Don't do it. Don't put that infinite pain into any living being. We have to collectively be there for all infant animals. Okay? That includes the infant humans. The ones that exist, we have to be there for them to prevent them from being traumatized, like most people have been traumatized as infants. This is a fact. Don't put more beings into the world. Prevent that from happening. That is my message to the world. And how do I cope with this situation of where my mother basically sums it all up, my entire life? It confirms every pain that I already collected. Siding 100% with my brother, not listening to anything I have to say. And she became a lawyer because she said, because she has such a good sense of justice, such a balanced sense of justice, and she wanted to become a judge for that reason. She would have not made a very good judge, but she made an even worse mother. I'm sorry I have to say it. She would have been a better off as a judge than causing trauma to a child. How do we cope with this? First of all, we cope with this by not drinking any alcohol at all. The alcohol is just going to ruin our lives, and it's a gradual spiral that goes down. It's a huge threat, huge, dangerous situation, very dangerous. It is not an option, not at all, not even a sip of it. Okay, there are medicinal herbs that calm down the nerves, like pieris and lavender and chamomile. All of those are very potent. Lemon, verbena, many herbs that are very calming and good for the nervous system and without side effects. I don't hold a grudge against my mother because I see that she is in a fog with that. She is ridden by her ego, her defense mechanism. her internal paranoia and alarm. The ego is not fair. The ego goes against someone out of jealousy and out of totally unfair reasons. So out of self-pity, out of entitlement, all kinds of things that are just causing tremendous problems in the world. So when there's unconsciousness, then the ego takes over and causes tremendous suffering, tremendous agony. That's why it is so infinitely important that every living being goes into themselves and introspects into themselves and meditates on themselves and lets off from other people, lets off from other beings. Let off the coveting, craving, needing, wanting, the eliciting, the tearing, the gossiping, the guilt tripping, the bullying, all of this, let off. It doesn't do you any good. It doesn't move the world forward. The only way one deals with a situation like this, particularly when it comes to money and inheritance and the distribution of that and the planning of the distribution of that, that's when people usually don't ever talk to each other about what's going on inside of them. I've always done it my whole life. I was the only one who laid the cards on the table. No one else did. They don't do it out of pride. Again, the ego it's everything the ego does. It doesn't lead us forward. It doesn't bring us connection or intimacy or understanding about each other. Pride, it doesn't move us into a friendship. Pride happens out of shame. So it's one and the same coin, just opposite sides of the same coin. Pride and shame. So shame causes pride. Pride causes more shame, and it flips back and forth. So that shame and pride coin needs to be dissolved. We need to melt this back into the alchemy and melt something positive out of that. Melt it into truth, the truth currency. Melt it into communication. I don't think my mother could do this, having lived over 80 years with that denial and those fantasy stories of who she is and who everyone else is in this game, The image she has of me is I am the bad person. Because the ego says that she who says the truth is the bad person. That's what the ego says, okay? So the person believes it. The truth sayer. That's why the truth sayer is called Satan, Satan in Hebrew. Satan means the person who says the truth. Has nothing to do with the demon or a devil. But they later on demonized that word, made that out of that word, okay? As they have done with many words. They've demonized many words that originally had a neutral character. The ego demonizes the truth because the ego loses its grip in the presence of truth. Okay, that's what happens. The ego here is that what he accuses other people of being. The ego says, you demon, you devil, you witch. Huh. What is he while he's saying that? You know, and I don't use those type of words at all because they come from religion. The ego means well for the individual host to that ego. Okay, so what is the ego? The ego is the psychological defense mechanism that takes on a life on its own. That's what the ego is. Okay, it's much more simplified in animals, much more simplistic, but it's there too. It happens there too. The less soul advanced someone is, the bigger is that ego energy. It stands in this type of balance. The more we bring into our existence of soul development, the more we instinctively already understand that, even as children. I can clearly see in 3-year-old children who is an angel soul, a God soul, or a stagnator. I've seen real beginner stagnators. I've seen a baby that gave me the creeps one time in a store. A baby that was a little boy, like 4 months old, sitting there perched in the shopping cart on the top where the purses go. And that baby was screaming with entitlement, with that entitlement energy, with a red face. And then he saw me looking at him, and he looked at me with a sadistic smirk on his face. It's amazing, a baby with a sadistic smirk on their face. That's the only time I've ever seen this. And I was shocked that this is even possible. So, there's no telling what's going to come out of that person later on. I don't even want to know. But those are baby souls also, you know. Those are total beginner souls. And they don't know how to cope with anything. They don't know what's right or wrong. That's why they need religion. Because that's why they think they need religion. So whatever religion is presented to them, they're going to latch onto this, and they cannot question it because they don't know naturally by themselves what is right and what is wrong. If a religion says you can go ahead and kill this living being, then he'll think that's okay. The religion says you can kill your teenage daughter for going on the internet, which the Muslims are doing. You call it honor killing. Then the ego latches onto this and says, oh, this is perfectly okay. That's why that guy, the psychopath guy who wrote a book about psychopaths, that's why he said the Middle East, the entire Middle East is a region, and there are nations of psychopaths. Whole nations of it. Like where the vast majority of people, like 99+% are all psychopaths. So someone who's criminally insane is a psychopath. Someone who does not know, does not have a clue on what is ethical or right or wrong. They don't see the other being. They can't see the other being is suffering. They only see their own, what they want, what their ego wants, what their own pride wants, so their own advantage in any given situation, and they walk over corpses for that. They don't see it. That compassion center is not developed, or is not used. It's just simply, if the compassion center would be there, it's not going to be used. But Adrian Rain found out that, Dr. Adrian Rain, he's a neuroscientist, he found out that these people also have a very atrophied compassion center. They have atrophied amygdala. The amygdala are two almond-shaped formations in the limbic system. There's a spider. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get Paul. Well, we're gonna have to get the vacuum cleaner. So, I love you, Spider. I'm sorry about all of this, but we have to take priorities. That is how it is. That's how it is. Same with my mother, and in psychology, the spider sort of has this symbolism of the mother, or of the bad mother, the mother who's not nice. But that's not fair to spiders, because they're just spiders. They never meant to be a bad mother. They're just spiders. It's an insect. An insect evolved like this, and that is how the insect defends itself and lives. So yeah, it's not bad, it's not good, it's beyond good and evil, as Friedrich Nietzsche said. And the bad mother is a baby soul driven by the ego, ridden by the ego. Okay? So I can see this from above. I don't want anything from my mother anymore. I know that there is nothing to get. Okay? Maybe that she might smile at me if I cater to her ego. If I lay the red carpet out for the ego. If I say, "You're a wonderful, incredibly gorgeous woman," then the ego might give a little smile back or something. Okay? Don't fall on me, please. So, but that's not, to me, that's not a friendship. A friendship to me is when I have the right to say something, when I can say and lay the facts on the table, and they don't go insane for that. That's a friendship for me. When someone does not distort the situation, when someone is not ridden by the ego that distorts, or that gaslights, or that blame shifts. Spider, I'm sorry. Vacuum cleaner, doom and gloom is coming. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to do. That spider looks like almost like a crab. Oh God. Oh my gosh, those two front legs, they look like those crab forearms, with those pliers on the front. That's what that looks like. And those crabs, they are related to spiders and lobsters, and it's not their fault that they have these pliers, and that's how they have to survive. So don't put those into boiling water, or anyone who eats that stuff. Don't eat that stuff. Go vegan. And make priorities that are serving all life on earth. Okay, don't spray a spider with pesticides. Okay, so if you have a spider in the house, you have to take priorities. You have to vacuum up the spider, okay, to protect the other beings. But don't spray pesticides on any insects or on anything, because pesticides hurt this planet. Very important to know that. So I deal with these things by laying the facts on the table, by writing about this. I have time to think about what I'm going to write. I meditate on it. I'm radically honest with myself. And then I can be radically honest and very crystal clear with other people. And if their egos take offense and can't deal with it, then that is not my problem. That is their problem. I'm not going to help their egos or my mother's ego or my mother. I'm not going to help her beingness, if I cater to her ego. If I say, oh, it's all okay, it's not a big deal. Like, if I say, it's okay, my brother should have more, because, he has a more expensive lifestyle. That would cater to their egos, that would not make the situation better. And that would be false if I said that, because that is not how I feel. Okay, I feel like parents should give their children equal parts with everything, with love, respect, money, whatever. And attention and friendship should be equal. There shouldn't be a preference. If there's a preference, if someone is pushed on the back bench, that person should not put up with this. They should not stick around when they are disadvantaged by their parents. When another child is given priority, that does not feel good, that is very abusive, very cold, and very hurtful. Okay? And if that situation occurs, you have to say something. You have to say, this is how I feel. Let them respond. We'll see how this conversation goes. But at the end of the day, if that is what it is, okay, if it's wasn't based on something else, misunderstanding or situation or whatever, if that's how it is, then you have to walk away and you have to walk your own path and you have to leave them behind. Okay, you cannot be sticking around with whoever that is if they don't want you in their life, if they put you on the back burner. So you have to walk on, move on. Okay, and I tell you, that brings clarity. My therapist, Esther Odermatt, has told me this in the past already. I have contacted her again because I was in despair. I told her what's going on, and I summarized the situation. She sent me a response, and she said, get yourself help. That I do. I get every help I can, holistically. And her saying what she said, that Nicola, you can live without them. Her saying that helped me tremendously. I needed that feedback, even though I already knew it. But I needed her to say this. I needed that feedback. I needed that clarity. Okay, that's very clear and very, very down to earth, what she said. And it's also tells me, you can do it. You're not helpless. You can do it. You can survive on your own. And you and your husband, yeah, you can put your brains together. You can survive on your own. And you can survive without their love too. For me, The love is the number one thing in this. Right? That's what makes it so painful and hurtful. And when this stuff is unevenly distributed, we feel put on the back burner, on the back seat. Clear that, we have to clear it up. We have to go through this. We have to feel it. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be radically honest with ourselves and others. And then we have to give the others the chance to respond. And if they say, we don't want you in your life, you move on. If they say, we want you in your life, this is a misunderstanding, then you work with them and work things out. And if things don't become worked out, then you have to weigh these things off and see, does this whole thing hurt me too much? If it hurts me too much, then I draw the consequences out of it and say, I let go. Okay. You share that stuff among yourself. I go. Or if they don't respond at all, if there's no response at all, they don't even bother to respond, that can happen too, then that's also a message, okay? And that's also the message, we don't even want to respond, we don't even want to bother with you. Then you move on, okay? We have to not put money over our own bodies and minds, okay? We have to not put a struggle and this hope for breadcrumbs of love. And my friend Birgit did that. That's a grave mistake that cost her her life. She did it with her family and she did it with her boyfriends. Okay, we cannot do this. If we get only breadcrumbs of love, it's not love. So we either get love, which is love. Love is full love. Okay, love is not selective. Love is real full love. Then it's good, okay? Or we move on alone. We walk on alone. And there is love in the world. There's love for everyone. The internet opens up the window to the world. We can find each other through common interests. I found Sandy and Mirka, okay? They are infinitely important to me. They mean the world to me. And I would like to meet you guys and I would like to share my life with you. Because I love you and I appreciate you infinitely much. I appreciate people who know how to love. Really love without restrictions. Without ego. Without conditions. And so we find like-minded people, we find love, and we move with them. Then we move together. And if someone doesn't find anyone, then I recommend to those people, and I do this on the internet a lot, people who are completely alone, I recommend go to an animal shelter and walk a dog. Give that dog a little bit freedom every day. Or go to an elderly home and talk to those people there. They need someone to talk to. They are facing death, they are terrified. They need someone, anyone to talk to. And it would be really the best if you can hold their hand. If you can do this. I don't know if I could do it. I'm so different. I'm from the future. They wouldn't accept me. Their egos would not accept me. But for someone who's not that different, who's more normal, go to a senior citizen's place, sit with them, talk to them, tell them they're not alone.